All right, guys. So I got some new numbers for you here, and I got to be honest with you. They're very, very good for Kamala and very, very bad for Trump. So I've seen a number of little data pieces here and there that are lining up well for the Democrats. We discussed it the other day. Kamala's secret weapon thus far appears to be white women. She's really outperforming with white women, and that could be a real problem for Republicans. But now we also have this. Let's take a look.
Because we've seen so many groups this year moving in Donald Trump's direction. So you would think his core group, his base of support would be doing the same. But in fact, it's moving a little bit away from him. So this is Trump's margin with non-college white voters. Unlike most voting blocks, this group is not moving towards him. It's actually moving slightly away. So you go back 8 years ago, he won him by 33. You go back 4 years ago, he won him by 31. Now what we look is we see that in the latest average of polls, he's only up by 27. Now that may not seem like a lot, but given that we're seeing these double-digit gains, say among black voters or among Hispanic voters in some of the polls, the fact that we're seeing this core group of supporters actually moving away from him, not just off of the 2016 baseline, but the 2020 baseline as well, I think that's a rather interesting development.
Shrinkage, as Donald Trump might say, based on what he said the last few days. Why could even a small difference with this group matter?
Why can a small difference with this group matter? Because look at what percentage of the electorate that they make up. So we can look nationally, right? Look at this. Non-college white voters make up 40% of the electorate. That's more than college whites at 29%. All other groups, voters of color at 28%. So this is something that we've seen throughout the board, right? Which is that Donald Trump is making huge gains with groups that make up a smaller percentage of the electorate while he's losing a little bit. But these groups that he's losing a little bit of make up a much larger portion of the electorate. But more than that, we're talking about the US of A where they make up 40%. Why don't you go to those key Great Lake battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin? They have outsized import in those Great Lake battleground states. Non-college white voters, look at this. They make up the slim majority of voters at 51%, way more than college whites at 30%, way more than all other voters at 16%. So if you're seeing movement in the Great Lake battleground states among non-college whites, that could be a very big development, John.
Are we seeing movement in the battleground states among non-college whites?
Nothing quite like a leading question, my dear friend. Yes. We are. We're seeing the same pattern in the Great Lake battleground states that we're seeing nationally. That is small movement among non-college white voters. Again, you see it back in 2016, Donald Trump won him by 25. You see a small movement in 2020, Donald Trump winning him by 22. And look at that, what we are today. Again, Trump is ahead, but his margins are smaller. And when you have a shrinking margin for Donald Trump among his core group that makes up the majority of voters, it can make up for big shifts among smaller groups of the electorate. And this is why Kamala Harris is still in the ballgame right now. It's because even though she's losing big league, she's losing big league among groups that make up a small portion of the electorate, and she's making it up among groups that make up a big portion of the electorate, even if the movements are small. But it's clear here.
That is very interesting. That is a clear downward slope in these key states among his key demographic. And if I can,
yes, please do.
Again, as you're looking here, again, this is where Donald Trump has seen gains. But it's the smallest group in these top two.
That's exactly right. Among white voters and non-college whites and college whites especially, they make up a lion's share of the electorate. And so even if you're seeing small movements among these groups, among non-college whites, slightly larger among college whites, it more than makes up, or at least makes up for, the movement among voters of color, all others in this particular case, John.
All points to a very close election. Harriet, and thank you.
15 days to go.
Very much.
Another big data point is the Democrats have raised way more money than the Republicans, and they're way outspending them. And that's even if you include like the PAC money and the super PAC money. So I would not have put that on my bingo card that white women and non-college whites are souring on Trump. But nonetheless, here we are. So more for you. Emerson poll here. Voters who made their decision on who to support over a month ago broke 52 to 48 for Trump, while voters who made up their mind in the last month or week break for Harris 60 to 36. So in other words, it wasn't looking good for Kamala, and then now it's looking really good for Kamala. So the late deciders are breaking way more to Kamala, 60 to 36. And of voters who still haven't decided or say they could still change their mind, they're leaning Kamala +5. Okay. All right. I mean, these data points are starting to come together, if I don't say so myself. And then you also have this new AP poll. Kamala's favorability is 22 points higher than Trump's. Harris is +5, and Trump is -17. Also asked who they trust, Harris is +12 on middle-class taxes. That's got to be a first, where Democrats are crushing Republicans on middle-class taxes, because Republicans have branded themselves as the party of tax cuts forever, and they pretend like it's for the middle class, but they always cut it more for the wealthy. But apparently, the public has caught on to that trick. Now Kamala's plus 12 on middle class taxes. Kamala's plus 5 on housing costs, plus 2 on jobs and employment, another one that Republicans usually crush, and plus 24 on abortion. So, big deal. That's a big deal, man. That is a big deal. We also have some early vote numbers coming in from a number of states, and I believe the only one that's not necessarily going great for Kamala is Nevada. The other ones are going well for the Democrats. And I will say, some people are misreading data a little bit because they're saying, okay, the Democrats are leading with the mail-in votes that have been counted in some places, right? But it's not as big of a lead as in 2020, therefore they're underperforming. But that's not the right way to look at it, because in 2020, you literally had the entire Republican Party screaming from the rooftops, nobody ever do early voting, right? It's fraudulent, it's cheating, it's a problem, only vote on election day. They've since changed their messaging, where now they also scream from the rooftops, do early voting. So you wouldn't expect to see as big of a historic divide. I mean, we were talking about pandemic time in 2020, right? So you're not going to see as big of a divide. So Democrats are still winning, but by a lower amount, but that's not at all indicative of like underperforming from 2020. So that's an important thing to remember. So interesting stuff. Now, having said all that, still, if you look at the polling data in all the swing states, it is razor thin in virtually every state. In virtually every state, it's razor thin. So we'll see what happens, but certainly these data points I just showed you here are boding very, very well for Kamala. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.